Hey everybody, my name's Braelen Addison, and on this past Friday, my third full-length LP, Lavender, was just released on all streaming platforms. I couldn't be more excited as the album turned out better than I could have ever imagined, and the reception has been really nice. So I decided I wanted to do a bit of different content today, and we're going to be doing a breakdown video of the leading single, Scraps for Scraps. So I wanted to talk about the inception of the guitar and the lyrics and the song in general, my music production techniques, mixing, and then finally I'll touch a little bit about mastering and the overall idea behind the song and my philosophy on how I produce sonics. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the breakdown. All right, hey everybody, welcome to the desk and welcome to the session. So in front of me I have Studio One 4 artist version and I have Scraps for Scraps open. So I actually have the rewire tool for Studio One 4, so that allows me to use external plugins from different manufacturers. So I have some stuff from Valhalla, some stuff from Waves, Sound Toys, etc. The first thing I wanted to talk about in this session is the two acoustic guitars that are hard panned left and right. So this is the establishing rhythmic and melodic elements to the track, and this is basically sits besides the bridge or the third verse here, sits for the entire track. So let me get my guitar and show you guys what's going on. So I wrote the song a little bit more than a year ago, and I was struggling a lot with chords and where I wanted to go with songs that I wrote. And for this song, I wanted to do something simplistic, something straightforward, and let the story carry the entire track. So it's basically just one note, this intro line, and it's a D. You have this octave, and then this octave. Get a little slap going, and that's it. I also go down to the major seventh interval as the verse continues, and then I add this here note. That's the entirety of basically all three verses. In the chorus, it goes, here, let me show you first. So for that, the chords are a little bit odd. This is sort of an A, I think, and the voicing of that is a little peculiar. So that's what I really liked about this song. I wanted these kind of close voicings to just kind of add a little bit more dissonance than maybe a regular A major. It's just a little bit more subtle and a little bit more instated. So the actual voicing is a 6th and 5th string, both the 5th fret, and the 4th and 3rd string, 4th fret. Then I don't play the two high strings. And then that goes down to either, I mean, it's really a G major kind of bar chord, but instead of playing these two top strings, I just move my thumb down to that the 3rd fret 6th string. So that's pretty much the entire song for guitar, except for this little bridge. So after the second verse, as you can see, it's pretty chopped up here. Most of this is to bring down the volume of that, because I find the slap, it got a little bit annoying after a while, or just kind of didn't sit in the mix right. So those are all manually reduced in volume. But that is just this D major shape here. It's D major 7 shape, I should say. So it's basically the same chord almost as the verse chords, but it's just higher up on the neck, so you get a little bit different timbre. It's just kind of nice. But yeah, that's pretty much all of the guitar part. There is a slight guitar offbeat sort of thing here in the third verse. And I'll talk about that a little bit more when I talk about the entire structure of the song. So that's it for guitar. Let's move on to the next stuff, probably vocals. I just have one lead line going the entire time. This is my main vocals. This is what I recorded in its own session. I like to record the main vocals all in, not one day necessarily, but one session, whether that be extended to 2 days, 3 days, whatever it might take to get the right take. And then I focus on my backing vocals another day, so I just kind of get a fresh look at everything. So before jumping into the backing vocals and the chorus stacks and whatnot, let's go into the main vocals. I recorded this in a makeshift acoustic booth As you can see on the walls, I make my own acoustic panels. So I kind of build not a pillow fort, but a sound panel fort, put some blankets over it. I have a closet over there that I like singing into and building the fort around that.
Lately I've been too shy, it's losing me clients.
And as you can hear, it is completely dead. And I love this sound for an intimate kind of setting. This really works quite well with this song in particular because it's just guitar, just a very intimate lead voice, and then also some bass.
Lately I've been too shy, it's losing me clients.
So yeah, the vocals are pretty straightforward. Let's talk a little bit about the processing of that, and then I'll jump into backing stacks and whatnot. As for processing, I do everything on buses, besides, maybe an EQ here or a mix tool, which is basically just gain staging. But I usually add any additional EQ if I feel like I didn't get it right with one or two in a bus. So here we go. Here's the main Vox bus. In this EQ, I scoop out a little bit of low end, just roll that off. Take out a little bit of where the bass sits, just so the two can play a little bit nicer. Take out a little bit of like 600 hertz. Well, I guess it's 700 here. That's just kind of the nasally frequency for my voice on this particular take. I usually scoop out anywhere from like 400 to 700 hertz, and that really just like nasally kind of nasty quality. I just take that out. And then additionally, I do some scoops here just to take out some like resonant frequencies or wherever those might be. And those will always vary depending on what your vocal take is. But usually I apply that method across all of my vocals. What I find really interesting here is that I didn't boost any high end. There's no high end added except for this little bump here. But besides that, in the 2 to like 10K range, I have added nothing, which I usually would, but my vocal chain is mostly going into the Neumann TLM 102, into my Focusrite 2i4 second gen. I don't have a need for a preamp, but I do still have to crank the gain pretty high to get something usable. But the TLM 102 has this nice little high shelf boost in like the 10K, 15K area. And that honestly, for my voice, is very flattering. So I don't even need to add any high end with that. As for compression, I have 0 compression going in just because it's recorded straight to my Focusrite. So let's talk about this a little bit. I have some medium attack and release times, a pretty low ratio, honestly, and the threshold is pretty low. All of this is according to the gain stage. I have an RVox on here too, just set pretty high. And then this is a de-esser. Usually I would use Waves' R de-esser, but I don't think I bought that for this session, so that I just used the default Studio One compressor for that. So let's go back to and talk about gain staging here. As you can see, most tracks have the mix tool as the first kind of item. If it's not an EQ, it's a mix tool. But basically with that, I take everything down to negative 18 dB. I like starting my mix there, so I have plenty of headroom for mastering later. That way I preserve a lot of the dynamics, and it's just honestly a more pleasurable experience to mix when you just have that much headroom. So yeah, pretty much everything is balanced to negative 18 dB. Like this 808 distorted my tie kind of patch that I made took down a whole lot. So let's talk about some of the next sections.
Lately I've been too shy.
As I mentioned with this first verse, it's just bass acoustic guitar and then some backing vocals and main vocals. So the next thing, let's talk about the vocals, is the backing in all the stacks.
Over at the shoe shine, it's time to downsize.
So my philosophy with this is I like to emphasize the important parts of the phrases that I'm talking about or that I'm singing about. And usually I keep the vocals pretty much down the middle for the verses, and then I add a whole bunch of layers that live in the left and the right channels pretty much exclusively.
My doctor says I might die. It's my third surgery.
So I do that a lot. I just like doubling. But this is a little bit different of a harmony.
Third surgery. Might die.
So with the main vocals,
I might die. It's my third surgery.
let's play the other vocals too.
It's my third surgery.
Personally, I don't record these with any kind of plan in mind. I just take a whole day, sit down with a microphone, see what kind of harmonies I can sing. I used to do choir, so this has been made a lot easier because I was a baritone. So even though I'm not a baritone, that's just kind of the role that I had to play. So really that revolves around emphasizing the lead line and really supporting and backing that up. So I just sing whatever comes naturally for me. And usually it's pretty easy, but sometimes it gives me a real headache when I'm just kind of singing and nothing sticks. So let's talk about the chorus vocals now.
Fired from your 9 to 5.
Again, I like keeping that lead line straight down the middle. And then let's first talk about the actual doubles.
Fired from your 9 to 5. Fired from your 9 to 5.
So I'm just doubling the main line here, just adding different timbres with my voice, singing it in, alternating chest voice, head voice, somewhere in the middle, but singing the same melody, the same words, everything like that, just to kind of back up and give more of a stereo image of the vocals. So together that it just sounds really big and very large.
You're fired from the coal mine, you're fired from your 9 to 5.
So that's where it starts, and these vocals come in when the drums hit. So let's talk about these harmonies next, because I have it distributed into chorus stacks, which is basically just doubles, and then harmonies.
Fired from the coal mine, you're fired from your 9 to 5.
So this group is pretty massive, honestly.
9 to 5.
That's where a lot of the harmonic content comes from, because in this chorus you still don't have a lot. You just have the guitars playing that rhythm that I showed you earlier, a little bit of bass, a kick drum, also the velocity is different on all of these just because it gives a little bit more variety, but we can talk about drums later on. So the chorus is really simple. It's just the guitars, bass, drums, and then these vocal stacks.
9 to 5. Fight over scraps for scraps.
Cool. So yeah, that's just the beginning of the song. I'm going to go take a walk before the sun goes down, and I will come back later. So I will see you then. All right, hey, I'm back from my walk. So let's talk about some chorus stacks, as well as more backing vocal stacks. When we left off, I think I was talking about verse 2, around the area and the relating stacks. Let's just jump into what these vocal harmonies sound like for verse 2.
Workforce need me. How could I afford even remorse? Logging in old machine to dream about a trade school.
So one thing I wanted to note about vocals in particularly is that I try not to tune any of the vocals. So in that stack, you definitely heard some vocals that were a little pitchy, a little bit off, but honestly, I think it contributes to the overall sound of my album and the kind of music that I make, just because I like it really personal and I like it, I don't know, it's definitely pretty indie, but I like the whole kind of folk elements of having, real vocals, real guitar, real bass, real, not drums, but that kind of approach. It's more of a philosophy than anything, but with the main vocals, it sounds like this.
Wonder how the workforce, do they even need me?
As you can see, that the left disc vocal is not tuned properly, but so it goes. So to move on from there, the actual second verse element, this is where I start introducing a couple more harmonic elements. So here we have a Wurlitzer emulation. This is my Juno DS61, and also some bass harmonies. So let's hear what these do. So yeah, that's basically what's going on in the second verse. But as for the actual bass melody, this is probably the main one. This is just kind of the same melody line from the beginning, just harmonized with this extra line here. It just gives a really unique kind of sound because I don't really hear harmonized bass that often, but when I do, it's really cool. Just really briefly, I wanted to talk about the melodica transition here between the chorus and the second verse.
Scraps.
So I really like incorporating a lot of live elements, as many as I can, really, or live instruments, I should say. It just sells the track a lot more when you have stuff that's not coming from a sound library or anything. So this is my actual melodica, bought on Amazon for like $30 or whatever. So these are pans both a little bit left, a little bit right. And as for the harmonic content, it's just playing two different lines that are harmonized with each other. And also this kind of little ramp. Faded in and faded out, but also the actual playing is all me, just abruptly stopping.
I wonder how the workforce.
So all of those elements with the harmonies, the bass harmonies and little piano part, just really light, adds a little bit more content. And as you can hear, that's really drastically rolled off with EQ. Okay, maybe it's not as drastic as I thought, but you definitely hear a lot more high-end frequencies than you do lower with these. So going into the bridge, the guitar is cut out, as you notice.
In on machine, you dream about a trade school.
We have two additional elements that were added. This little percussion thing, this is an accordion kind of sample. I like to use samples to reinforce other live organic instruments and not just have everything be a sample, as I mentioned. But the second element is this little smoky organ. Really subtle, just kind of sits in the top end of the mix.
Don't be a fool, electricians.
I love that little sound. Again, it's coming from the Juno DS61. I use that for a lot of sounds, including basically all of my electric piano emulations, all of my organ sounds, all my string sounds, anything that's not able to be replicated very well with sample libraries that you can find. So I just find that the Juno does it way better. I do use it for a lot of synth stuff as well, but I just recently acquired a Korg mini log, so that's going to be taking care of all of my synthesis. Also, I introduce the shaker and the tambourine. That really makes it sound different from all the other prior sections. Just one element, it's very basic with the rhythm, but it just adds a lot of, a little bit more high-end content, but also just variation because it's not present in the chorus and it's only present in the bridge. So that's what I really like doing is contrasting things, contrasting elements between sections, adding, subtracting, just having something dynamic and fluid where you're taking things out, adding things in. That could be really cool. The organ and the accordion comes back in for the second chorus.
You're fired from the coal mine, you're fired from your 9 to 5.
Okay, so now there are a whole lot of elements that are added. First of all, and the most obvious, is supporting the bass is this low distorted 808, which I will show you. This is the Mai Tai patch for it. As you can see, it's in a knit patch, meaning I have designed this myself. I've done that across all the 808s on the record. I just really like a customized sound. You can get a lot more specific with it. Super low. Almost inaudibly low. Like on a phone, you're not hearing this. On laptop speakers, you're not hearing this. The note choice itself is a little bit low. A2 is a little bit low for an 808 sound. Like it really should live around here a little bit. But it's pretty distorted as well. And it's EQ'd pretty heavily to add some more high-end harmonics. Okay, yeah, it is distorted. It's just on here. I'll talk about mixing in a second, but I just wanted to finish the rest of the compositional elements before that. Additional rhythm, hi-hat and little snare. Just another hi-hat to kind of add some rhythmic elements. So the actual rhythm section in the chorus. It's a little swung. I don't I'm pretty sure all of this is played in by hand. As you can see, there's a lot of stuff that's just not on the grid. Some stuff has changed, obviously, but I like having a good amount of swing if I do quantize anything at all. But I try and do all my drums organically on my Akai Mini MPK, whatever. Just the beat pads doing that. And when I play in rhythm, it always sounds way better than if I quantize anything or just program anything.
You're fired from the coal mine. You're fired
More
from
stacks.
your 9 to 5. How are we supposed to survive?
So as you can hear, there are additional vocals besides the harmonies that I talked about last time. But I like adding these really low kind of sounds. It's really subtle, and I think I do it more in the third chorus. Yeah, there's a couple more of the in here. But just adding little elements like that to the vocals just adds a lot of depth.
How are we supposed to?
And if those were not there,
How are we supposed to survive?
it just drives the song. And it's stuff like that where you're inserting things that you can hardly hear, but are definitely audible to the attentive listener. Those are the things that really fill out a production and make a song sound full. Honestly, this song is not a lot of elements. As you can see, it's at most 58 tracks. That's not a lot in these days. Most of them comes from just vocals and more vocals too. So as for actual instruments, just the guitars that are double panned, bass, 808, some drums, melodica. Oh yeah, that's also creating a nice little pad sound almost. And in context.
2 5. How are we supposed to survive?
I wish there was a little bit more high end on that, but that's okay. Okay, so that's why I was talking about layering kicks, because in the third chorus, I definitely do that. But let's talk about the verse 3, because there's something that's interesting going on with these guitars in verse 3. So the main guitars that have been going the entire time have completely dropped out. And now you get these offbeat kind of things that I talked about earlier in the video.
You don't have time to be alive. My dog just died, it's no surprise. I didn't have money.
I wanted to have the 808 going the whole time just to continue the sound from the chorus and to just add some sort of transitional element that familiarizes yourself with both the verse 3 section and the chorus section. So again, the electric piano, the Wurlitzer emulator, and more bass harmonization.
Be alive.
But here's what's interesting, is these guitars start off kind of syncopated and off from each other. And then slowly, they join together. The coolest thing about this was that was an accident. I did not mean to play it like that.
Just died, it's no
I was originally tracking these guitars and they was just going to have the same kind of pattern as the first verses, but then this happened.
Didn't have money, so I'll just laugh and pretend it's funny. I don't
Also,
think
more back vocals here, but mostly stripped.
But it doesn't matter if I disagree. My insurance won't cover it for free. 2, 3, you're fired.
So yeah, that's that section. Also, right into the ramp up in the chorus, I bring back the other guitars. And just because it's the verse pattern, I am again using that double D octave kind of picking pattern. But there's so much rhythm going on there with just 2 guitars that sound, or I guess 4 guitars, that sounds a little bit syncopated, a little bit kind of offbeat. It's not 100% quantized or on grid, so it just gives this kind of on edge feeling where you're like, where are we going? And then it rolls into this kind of this drum fill with these snares.
2, 3, you're fired from the coal mine.
And it's like, we found our footing. We know where we're going. We're mad at these people because they fired us.
You're fired from your 9 to 5.
All right, so some additional elements that I added from other, different from other choruses. Here's a pad. It's doing some things, but honestly, you can hardly tell that this is here. This is just one of those things that's adding atmosphere, a little bit of texture in kind of the, 500, 600 hertz range. So there's that added, and also these two shakers, which I use shakers so much. I have these like little Mendy eggs or Mendai, I can't remember what the company's called, but they're both panned hard left and right just to add a little bit more depth. And this kind of, since you already have so much stuff that's already panned stereo, you need additional elements to kind of transition into the chorus, because choruses are usually panned a lot more and there's a lot more stereo content there. So again, another kick drum stacked on top of the other kick drum. So this added kick drum is just kind of adding a top end element that makes it cut through most laptop and phone speakers a little bit better. That was my intention there. Just rounds out the sound of the kick a little bit more. As for backing vocals, you have these little vamps here.
2, 3, yeah.
Really like that. That's also stacked with the
2, 3, yeah.
the main vocal line. I'll be talking about space and texture and mixing in just a sec. The next element, electric guitar. This is a kind of distorted pattern that's doing exactly what the acoustic guitars are doing, but just distorted and electric guitar. I kind of wish that was more distorted, honestly, but the song's already out. These electric guitar lines kind of follow this melodica line, stacked with the electric guitars. So yeah, as for additional elements, we bring back that additional kind of hi-hat sound that was there in the other choruses. And honestly, as for composition, that's about it. As you can hear, I'm going a little bit harder with the It's a little out of key, but it's all good. Those little pieces of harmony add so much, in my opinion. That's pretty much the end of the song. There's not much more. There's just this kind of guitar line that goes from stereo, and these are different takes as well, but it goes from stereo down to mono. I would still consider this second part of the chorus just a repeat, but I really wanted to start narrowing down the song because we're coming to a conclusion. So the easiest way for me to do that was to just bring the guitar leads down to a mono track. But it's also harmonized again. Each section kind of sounds like this. Mix with the higher octave. Together.
Then cut your ties based off replies. Fight over scribes.
That solo puts a smile on my face every time it plays, seriously. But I also added this little kind of such a weird melody, but I really like how wonky it is. Cool. So that's the song. It's pretty straightforward, pretty simple, all things considered. Let's talk about the mixing. So as I mentioned earlier, I gain staged everything first, but let's see how things are slotted in here. Everything is high passed and in a bus. What I really like doing is sending everything to a bus and having a bunch of effects tracks as well. This is pretty standard, if you just get a hang of routing, it's pretty intermediate. But as for, let's start with the guitars. Here they are. I also, as you notice, limit things on the way in. I don't know how I feel about this still, but basically just makes mastering easier because you just, instead of having everything or one limiter on the master bus, which I master in a separate section anyway, or session, I should say, it just makes my life a little bit easier with the dynamics. As you can see, not a lot is doing here. The actual tracks themselves are peaking at negative 18 dB. So this limiter is hardly doing anything. Maybe once it gets a little bit louder on the chorus section, it starts actually kicking in. As you can see, you know, at most 3 dB of gain reduction. You got 1 dB there, 2.3. But it just keeps it a little bit more even. You could also have this at the end of your end of the chain, but for some reason I just decided not against that, I suppose. A lot of EQ here. So scooping out low end, little bit of mid rumble, just making space for vocals, additional EQ, really subtle stuff, taking out too much bass. They're pretty compressed, as you can see. And honestly, my secret sauce for a lot of things on Lavender has been the RC20. It's just an absolutely amazing plugin by Excellent Audio. It does so many different things, like it adds noise, like vinyl emulation, it adds some tape wobble and flutter, it has distortion, you could have bit distortion, adds like a little bit of stereo delay kind of thing, and also whatever this is. I still am not sure how to describe what this does, but it makes things sound good. This is to kind of help the slaps a little bit. This is a really fast compressor, just trying to deal with the transients of the guitar slaps, because it was really obnoxious, as I mentioned earlier, just having the kind of slaps there the whole time. So without this compressor, it just compresses the slaps really hard and tames it, just brings everything together a little bit more nice. So let's move on to drum processing. As you can see here, I like having kick drums. I put R bass on kick drum samples sometimes in choruses just to have them shine a little bit more. Pretty standard compression, slow attack, quick release, or you know, medium release, whatever. 2.7 ratio. Pretty standard stuff. Just most of it's getting slotted to fit with the bass guitar. So here's the EQ for the actual kick drum itself, boosting a lot of that low end content, taking out some of the rumble and, you know, mid content to make space for vocals. Add a little bit of high end to emphasize the attack on the kick, just so you can hear it a little bit better through phone speakers. As for the bass, let's look at the bass EQ in the chorus. We have a lot of it going on. A little bit of high end content. Here's the second EQ, just scooping out some detailing stuff. I really like adding a little bit of boost at like 500 area. It just adds a little bit of grumble to the bass. You can hear it a little bit better in the mix. There are some nice fundamentals there that sound really good when boosted. Again, just a little bit more detailing. And then finally, some distortion. Next, let's look at some of the vocal processing. The backing vocals is pretty much just the same kind of flow as the original Vox bus, but just processed a lot harder, like just compressed harder. I also have it running back into the vocal bus, so it's just being compressed again, and more low-end EQ is being scooped off. But I find that it's really easy to make harmonies and double lines kind of fit in the mix when you just roll off a bunch more low-end information than you would on your main vocal take. Sometimes I also low pass it as well. So taking out some of that high-end content just to kind of just make it sit a little bit nicer. But let's look at some vocal effects that I really want to highlight. I have a couple different things going on at one time. I have a short verb, which appears in choruses, chorus. And then I also have a long reverb, which I'll get into the settings in a sec. That just kind of goes on in the chorus, fills it out, makes it sound huge. For main ambience, I use slap delays. Slap delays have been fantastic and have been my friend. I personally use Echo Boy. Sound Toys is amazing. These guys know their delays. Let's just say that. I use it on everything, like everything. For my reverbs, I use Valhalla stuff. Use the vintage verb, and I also use Valhalla shimmer when I need just kind of high-end reverb content. But yeah, these are kind of, I like the plates. It all sounds really nice. I went for a more modern sound here. But as for actual reverb processing, I use the J37 tape emulation by Waves just to add a little bit more grit, a little bit more distortion. Just makes it a little bit warmer, takes out some of the high end, just adds artifacting that is pleasing to the ear. I also have an 1/8 note delay. Again, sound toys. Something that I like to do with delays, I like to compress it and I like to sidechain it. So when I'm singing, the delay gets ducked down, and then when I'm done singing at the end of the phrase, it balloons and you can declutter the mix. I also add a flanger just to kind of send it farther to the back. Lastly, I have a half note delay, which is again Echo Boy, going into some chorus, just Studio One chorus, going into Valhalla Vintage Verb. I find that with the half note delays, they get to be really cumbersome and they fill the mix a lot if you're not careful with it. So having a chorus and a reverb just kind of sends it way farther to the back. All the backing vocals are much of the same. I just send them to the short reverb and the long reverb accordingly. If I need some delay, I add some delay, but it's pretty sparse. And I think that's pretty much it. With other automation lanes, I do a lot of stuff with instrument space. So with the melodica, for example, I use the Valhalla Shimmer on here on these transitions. Automating things really gets you going to a lot of places. You can add a lot of depth and a lot of variety in your mixes just by automating your different elements. Overall, guys, that's a breakdown and quick look at the song Scraps for Scraps. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comment section. I'll be doing these on a weekly basis until there's no more songs left on Lavender, or at least I plan on doing that. So if you actually have any specific things that you want me to address from the album, I will take a look at it in these sessions. Thank you so much for spending some time with me looking at this song. I don't know if you learned anything. I'm going to get better at doing these and working on the format. This is my first breakdown video, so it's a little, it dragged on a little bit. I want to be a little bit more concise in my next ones. But yeah, that was the song. Again, thank you for joining me and have a good day. Bye-bye.